Okay, so Shavua Tov, everyone. We are doing chapter 13. So hopefully everyone had a chance to see my email, and hopefully some of you had a chance to do your assigned homework. The assigned homework. The assigned homework was to see chapter 12, and the truth is that, just in case someone didn't have the chance to, we won't read chapter 12, but I do want to see just look at a tiny bit of it, because we will be referring back to it. We will be doing some comparison. So, wait, let me just switch this to English.
Can I ask some question from the chapter 12?
Okay, so let's just do. I'm gonna. If those of you who have it in front of you, great. If not, I'll just read it out loud. We're not gonna do the whole thing. Okay, I'm just gonna quickly point out the main points that we're gonna need for our chapter 13. So the chapter 12, meaning let's kind of recap. Chapter 10 and 11. Okay, chapter 10 and 11 were the two major campaigns. Right, chapter 10 was the campaign against the southern kings, right? Meaning we had the 5 kings that ganged up, that were trying to, they ganged up and wanted to attack the Gibeonites for breaking the treaty. Remember? The Gibeonites tricked the Jewish people, the children of Israel, to making a covenant with them. And meaning they basically betrayed the covenant that was made, or the not covenant, whatever, the coalition, with all the other nations. And then the 5 kings decide to gather together and to attack Givon. And then at that point, Joshua stays true to the alliance, or the treaty that he made with the Gibeonites, comes and launches a surprise attack against the 5 kings, and then he pursues them further, destroys those 5 kings, conquers their cities, and turns it into a whole campaign of the southern part of Israel. After that, we had all of the kings of the north come together to try to attack Yehoshua and the children of Israel, and then we have the northern campaign. Okay, those were chapter 10 and 11. Okay, and then chapter 12 starts the following. The following are the local kings whom the Israelites defeated and whose territories they took possession of. Then it goes and it says, it recaps all of the lands that were conquered still during the time before Moshe passed away, before they crossed the Jordan. And it goes through verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, verse 4, verse 5, verse 6. Okay, verse 6, these were vanquished by Moshe, the servant of Hashem, and the Israelites, and Moshe, the servant of Hashem, assigned their territory as a possession to Reuven, Gad, and half the tribe of the Manasseh. And then from verse 7, it goes on to say, and the following are the local kings whom Joshua and the Israelites defeated. And it goes, and then verse 9, they were, okay, the king of Jericho, 1. The king of Ai, near Bethel, 1. The king of Jerusalem, 1. The king of Hebron, 1. And it goes through the entire chapter, the entire rest of the chapter, just numbers and recounts the individual cities or kings that were defeated during the campaigns that we saw, including some cities that were not even mentioned during the southern campaign and the northern campaign. And that's the whole rest of the chapter. Verse 18, the king of Afek 1, the king of Sharon 1, the king of Madon 1, the king of Chatzor 1, the king of on and on and on and on and on, until verse 24, the king of Tirzah 1, total number of kings, 31. So chapter 12 seems to just be, it is a list of kind of recap of all of the territories or kings that were defeated during up to this point in the book. Okay, that's chapter 12. Yes, Galia, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, I have some question because I looked at the map at all this military campaign that he did, and actually, usually when you're trying to conquer the country, you start from certain point, and you just go the entire army or north or south. But in this case, it just they went south, they went north, then in the middle, then they not. It's just they're jumping from side to side. Is there a reason?
Well, I'd say I did not look at the map as closely, I think, as you did. So I can't give you, I'm not sure I can give you a full answer, but just the first point that you mentioned, they started from the south and then they went north. But that's because how the events took place, like we mentioned in chapter 10. They didn't, it very much could be that if the five kings of the south, the five major kings of the southern area of the southern mountain, we'll talk about it soon, if they did not gone and lay siege and try to attack Givon, then it very much could be that Joshua would have started and done it systematically. Very much could be, but the reality forced him to take action against those kings and then pursue them, and not going to just. He actually, we saw in chapter 10 that he started by vanquishing them, and then he returned to the Gilgal, and then he realized, wait a second, those five kings, they're still on the run, they're hiding in a cave, and he went back and he pursued them and he destroyed their cities. So he just the realities of war don't always necessarily go based on your perfect plan. So we know the southern campaign was basically forced upon them first, and then the northern campaign took place. Now I don't know if that is enough to explain the entire order in which the cities appear, but at least the initial two stages that's the explanation. Okay. So, but I want us to keep in mind what we just saw as an overview of chapter 12 as we go into chapter 13. Okay? Okay, chapter 13. Now Joshua was old, advanced in years. And Hashem said to him, "You are old and advanced in years, and there remains yet very much land to be possessed." Comments, questions, observations?
What's the difference between old and advanced in years?
Okay. Any thoughts? Anyone want to offer any thoughts on that? Difference between old and advanced in years? I agree with you that it's significant. It's not superfluous. It's not. I agree with you. And by the way, look at it's like the description is very strange. Now Joshua, like the narrator is speaking first. Now Joshua was old, advanced in years. And Hashem said to him, "You are old and advanced in years." It sounds kind of strange.
Yeah.
It looks like the one who writes this, he saw it before, and it's Hashem. He says it's like people. They saw that he's old. And Hashem said, "You know what? You're old."
Okay, so what is that? I agree, but what is that? Meaning, it's basically God is saying to him, "Listen, it's not just that the narrator is saying you're old. Like, come on, Joshua,
You are old.
you are old,
Yeah.
and not only are you old, you're old and you're advanced in years." So what is God like mocking him? Like, is it like, putting sand in his wounds? Yeah.
What difference does he make what difference does it make that he's old? Wasn't Moshe old when he took over the leadership? Wasn't he already in his 80s or close to it?
No, Moshe was 80. Yes, Moshe was
Yeah.
80. We don't know this now, but we will find out later. At this point in the story, Joshua is 110. Meaning Joshua dies at the age of 110. Okay? So that is pretty old. Okay? But it's interesting that you mention Moshe. Because it does not say about Moshe that he was old. Not only does it not say about Moshe that he was old, it says about Moshe that even though he was 120, he was filled with youth and vigor. I don't remember the phrasing in English, but in Hebrew it
he
says
had all his strength.
he had all of his strength. So if we've been constantly throughout this book comparing Joshua to Moshe, some places comparing, some places contrasting, but we saw from the very first moment of the book that Joshua has no choice. His role in history is, on the one hand, to be a continuation of Moshe, but to live in his shadow, which of course makes sense, right? Remember from the very first chapter, and we saw it appearing over and over and over again. Moshe is the servant of Hashem. Joshua is the servant of Moshe. And that's okay. And I don't think Joshua ever had an issue with that. Again, can you imagine coming after Moshe? So Joshua, all he could hope for is to be able to continue and to fulfill Moshe's destiny, or Moshe's the job that he put upon him. But this, I agree with you that this is that when you read this, the image of Moshe comes to mind, but I think it comes as a contrast.
I mean, we might want to say, Rabbi, that further to what we've been building upon over the weeks, that less miraculous things are happening. So when one gets old, they can accomplish less. Time is of the essence. They need to do, as opposed to Moshe, who at 120, if he was as strong as he always was, is a bit miraculous.
Right, and if it weren't for Hashem, taking his neshama, he would have continued living, right? Like Moshe, the pasuk is very explicit by saying that he still had his strength, in his vigor, as if nothing had changed. So if it weren't for Hashem actively, taking him, he would have continued, right? Whereas Joshua seems to follow a more natural way, which is he's old, and therefore he cannot accomplish. But it's not just that he can't accomplish; there's something else going on here. Yes, Galia.
Maybe what the author and Hashem means, it's not old. Maybe just old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned? Why?
Yeah, maybe the way how everything was done by now, it has to be changed. And you're just old. You're just.
Where do you see do you see any hint of that other than the phrasing? Do you see anything else?
I see it in my house when I try to say something to my kids. The way how I think it's old-fashioned.
You know what? I don't think that you're completely wrong. I don't think you're completely wrong. We'll get to it afterwards. I don't think we've seen enough to say that conclusively, but I think later on we will see something that will hint to that. But I think that the old and advanced in years, I think this is a throwback, like we said before, because a person can be old as far as their chronological age, but it doesn't show on them. We all know people who are what we would call old, but they don't have the air of an elderly person. Okay, they're youthful. They're youthful in their attitude. They're youthful in the way they carry themselves. They might not even be in the best physical shape, but they are youthful. They're energetic. They are, or maybe even they don't look it. You don't look a day over a 90-year-old. You don't look a day over 70. You don't look a day over 60. And we all know there are people who look much older than they are, and it's usually not just a physical feature. Sometimes it's a physical feature, but many times there's a certain character traits or air about them, about how they carry themselves, how they speak to people, how they conduct themselves. It's not just about the way a person looks. It's not just about the way a person. It's something less tangible, but obviously I think one of these phrases is describing the chronology of age, and the other seems to be describing the character of the age. And it's coupled here with what? And there remains yet very much land to be possessed. What does that sentence, that phrase, if you're Joshua, what effect does that sentence have?
You don't have the luxury of time to do the job you need to do.
Forget about luxury of time. Time's up. We'll see. We don't know this yet, but Joshua won't be doing anything anymore, basically. I mean, he will be, but Joshua will not. Well, Joshua will not be fighting any more wars, if I remember correctly.
I would say what's wrong with me. Why I cannot do this?
So it seems right. Meaning, it seems Hashem doesn't seem to be rebuking him. Okay, he's not saying to him, "Why did you not fulfill my mission? Why did you not?" But he says, "Listen, this is the reality. The reality is meaning you were supposed to bring them into the land of Israel. That was your job. And if we go back to chapter 1, right? Hashem said to him, you will take them into the land, and you will conquer the land. You will go before them and conquer the land for them or with them, and you will lead them in conquering the land and settling the land." And a lot has been done. A lot has been done. We just saw chapter 12. 31 kings, 31 cities have been vanquished. 31 kings is a lot of time. We'll see. Based on calculations, the calculations that are done by the commentators and the different points in the story that we'll see next chapter we'll see an important historical, we'll see a certain anchor for calculating the years. Well, we're standing now at about 5 years after the crossing of the Jordan River. Okay, but it seems that Joshua has been old for a while. But he's saying to him, listen, you're old. This is the reality. You're old, advanced in years, meaning you're coming to the end of your ability to lead the people and to continue on. The reality is, there's a lot that has not been accomplished yet. As far as the task that you were given, there's a lot that has not been accomplished yet. Yes, Sylvia?
Just a quick question. We're only halfway through the book. And he's already telling Joshua you're old, what is he doing for the rest of the book?
Right. I know. It's a very good point, and we'll have to you're right. We'll have to decide. I'll have to think exactly how to conduct ourselves over the next few chapters. The majority of the rest of the book is very, very technical and talks about the inheritance, the borders of each one of the tribes, the specific. It's a description. I'll see there are certain very interesting and very important events that do take place, but the majority of the rest of the book is just a description going tribe after tribe and describing the territory that they were given and what did they do once they were given that territory. Did they try to conquer it? Did they not try to conquer it? But most of it is very, very technical, and there's very little until the last 2 chapters when we get to Joshua's death and we see his final speech, which is absolutely fascinating, and what he directs them, how he directs them towards the future. The majority, we're actually at the end, very close to the end of the book, even though chapters-wise, you're right, we're basically at the half. There's still another 11 chapters. But as far as the events of the book, we're almost done. So I'll have to decide what chapters we will see in entirety and which ones we'll just see certain things. We might cover 2 or 3 chapters each class now, because we might just skip to the actual events, the actual narrative that takes place, and skip because try to imagine, if you're not looking at a map, that you have to write down for posterity the borders, the geographical borders of a land. You need to spend a lot of words trying to describe the topography and the borders and the cities in order to get an exact description of a plot of land. And then, you're talking about 12 tribes and how much land, which land each one of them got. So there's a lot of that description, but not too many events. Yeah, Paul.
I'm just wondering, do we see the same sort of thing as the transition from Moshe to Yeshua? He felt he was too old to lead this new generation. Not so much too tired, but he wasn't the right leader for the next generation.
You're raising, again, excellent point, because the moment you hear that Joshua is old and coming in age, meaning we're about to come to the end of Joshua's time as a leader, we immediately think to ourselves, can't help thinking, okay, what happened with Moshe? When Moshe came to the end of his leadership, what happened?
He was opposite. He wanted to continue. He asked the God why.
Okay, and after God said to him, no, you're not continuing, what happened? Hashem told him, meaning Moshe requested, who should lead, and Hashem said, Yehoshua, go take Yehoshua and take him up in front of the whole nation and put your hands up top of him and make it clear to everyone that the leadership is transferring now, and this is being done by, God God am commanding you to transfer the mantle of leadership to Joshua. So you can't help but ask, okay, or to expect, is Joshua going to appoint a successor, or is God going to appoint a successor just like Joshua was appointed? I'll tell you the short answer, which we don't see yet because right now that's an open question, right? We just read one verse. I'll tell you that the answer is no. No successor is appointed, neither by Joshua nor by God. And obviously the big question we're going to ask as we continue through the chapters is, why not? Okay, let's continue. But I'll just point out one more throwback to a comparison to Moshe. In a similar way, just like Moshe was not able to complete his mission of bringing the Jewish people, fully all the way towards the destiny, to the completion of their destiny, leaving Egypt, going through the desert, receiving Torah, coming to the land, conquering the land, going from all the way from Egypt all the way to the promised land, pun intended. So similar to, just like Moshe was not able to complete his mission fully, even Joshua, who had a much smaller mission, also he was only able to get the Jewish people to a certain point. Okay, now we're going to read from verse 2 to verse 4. It's going to describe, it's going to start, from verse 2, this is still Hashem, God speaking to Joshua, right? He says, you are old, coming in age, there's still plenty that has not been done yet, and then God is still speaking, okay? And he says the following, this is the land that yet remains, all the borders of Philistines and all of the Geshurites, from the Shichol, which is before Egypt, to the borders of Ekron northward, which is counted to the Canaanites, the 5 lords of the Philistines, the Gazites, and the Ashdodites, and the Ashkelonites, right? That's Gaza, Ashdod, and Ashkelon, the Gitis, the Ekronites, also the Avim. From the south, all the land of the Canaanites, and Me'arah, that belongs to the Sidonims, to affect to the border of the Amorites. So if I were able to, which I can't, if I was there, or you were here, we would take out a map and we would look at it together and show you exactly. Basically what it's describing here is what today we would call northern Israel. Okay? It's basically the majority of the Negev and the Gaza Strip. And a little bit more than the Gaza Strip. Okay?
So southern Israel.
Basically a big chunk of southern Israel, we're being told here, this area was not conquered. I will point out an interesting point here, that you sometimes will hear people discuss whether the Gaza Strip is historically part of the land of Israel. this proves very clearly that it is. When God says to him, this is the land that has not been, that is still, that remains yet to be possessed. Meaning part of the land that Joshua and the children of Israel were commanded to conquer and possess was also those areas. Okay, let's continue. Again, all of this is Hashem speaking to Joshua, making sure Joshua, and of course us the readers, know that all of these areas are still supposed to be conquered. They were part of the original plan as far as what we should conquer and where the Jewish people should live. Yes, Galia.
Yeah, but still, in the time of King David, he was fighting a lot with Plishtim.
Yes.
And still he didn't conquer it.
Correct. It's not a coincidence. I agree. That region has always been difficult. Already, I don't know if you guys remember, we saw this already in when we did our class about Midrash last year, about Yitzchak, and we saw the different opinions, or even 2 years ago, we were talking about comparative commentary, and we saw the Ramban and the Abarbanel and different interpretations about why is it that those areas of the Philistines was not conquered. The Ramban said this is a symbol for the future of the third Bet Mikdash, and we saw there was always a difficulty. The Radak says about that place that this is a symbol that only in the times of the Messiah, this land, this area of the Philistines will finally be conquered. Just like Yitzchak had difficulty with those people, we will always have, and Radak wrote this in the 12th century in France. So yes, and even David, who conquers massive parts of the land, still has difficulty and challenge with that region. Yes, nothing.
Because the Plishtim of those days, it's not the same. It's not the same people. It's not the same nation.
As what?
As today we have Palestine.
No, of course not. Of course, it's not the same people. But just because you do not belong to the same genetic line doesn't mean that you can't fulfill the same historical role. But okay, let's continue. We continue with verse 5. And the land of the... So verse 2, 3, and 4 are discussing the land that remains to be conquered in southern Israel. Okay? Verse 5, and the land of the Giblites and all the Lebanon toward the sun rising, from Baal Gad under Mount Hermon to the entering into Hamat, all the inhabitants of the hill country from Lebanon to Misrefot Maim, and all the Sidonians, I will drive them out from before the children of Israel, only divided by lot to the Israelites for an inheritance as I have commanded you. Okay, so if verse 2, 3, and 4 are saying that the majority of the southern part of Israel still remains to be conquered, verse 5 and 6 point out that also very large chunks of the North Israel also remains to be conquered, right? We know some of these names. We know the term Lebanon. We know the term Hermon. So the northern parts, the most northern parts of the land, have also not been conquered. Again, the truth is, this makes sense. You're talking about the distances here between Hermon and Lebanon, and what we talked about in verse 3. The border with Egypt. This is a very large piece of land. You're talking about a nation of 3 million people. It is. It's a vast land. I know it doesn't. We all like to think of Israel. We always point out to ourselves how small Israel is. Yes, it is small compared to Canada, compared to most other countries. But you're talking about 3 million people, men, women, and children, who have been there for 5 years. It makes a lot of sense that there's still a lot that has not been conquered. But Hashem says, just so you're clear, this still needs to be conquered. Again, it doesn't sound like he's blaming Joshua. He's stating fact. You're old, coming in age, perfectly natural, but let's not forget that we're not at the end game yet. Yes.
But if we're coming back, why he doesn't have successor? Maybe here's the answer. I will drive them out of behalf of the children of Israel.
Which
it means God is going to do it.
What is that? What is that? What does that mean? God is going to do this?
Maybe he thinks that it's going to be some kind of miracle. I don't know.
Okay, we can see we will see later on, but that would not really fit with what we've seen so far in the book. So far in the book, we've seen quite the opposite. We've seen the opposite structure. We've seen it gradually move away from what we would call revealed miracles and more towards, natural miracles or God acting through man, meaning man acting out God's will. Again, not God depriving man of his independence. Quite the opposite. Man acting out God's will. We say, God is giving it to the Jewish people, but the fact that the Jewish people are fighting and conducting themselves in the natural way, and again, if you're right, then we'll see later on a whole bunch of miracles, but we won't see it. We won't. We're going to see much more of the natural conduct. I think he seems to be saying what he said beforehand, what we saw in chapter 10 and 11, especially in 11. Us chasing and winning and fighting equals God is vanquishing them in front of us. How? By us doing it for him. Yes?
I don't understand a little bit. Joshua is a great leader. He's a general. And God is planning part by part all this. He doesn't know by himself, Joshua, what to do, what the future plans for his army.
No, I don't think he's giving him a battle plan. He's describing. Let's make sure we know. Joshua, you're about to leave. Okay, you're old. You're not doing anything else. But let's make sure. Let's do a summary. Let's summarize what still has not been accomplished. Let's take what's the word I'm looking for? Let's take not take count. Take what's the phrase I'm looking for? When you want to see what's left, take
Stock.
Take stock. There you go. Thank you. Let's take stock. What still needs to be accomplished? Now, we would expect to see, but this we're going to leave as an open question. Okay, who is this message being told to? Is this, meaning other than Joshua, because Joshua is going to be gone soon, is this something that's being told to the Jewish people, the next leaders, the prophets, who? Okay, but it's taking stock. But it's interesting how detailed it is, right? Now, an interesting point is, let's think back to what we saw, what we skimmed through chapter 12. Chapter 12, king after king, the king of this, the king of this, the king of this was conquered, the king of this, and 31 kings. Chapter 12 goes, boom, 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 we got rid of this guy, we got rid of this guy, we vanquished him, and suddenly chapter 13, wasn't conquered, this wasn't conquered, this wasn't conquered. The two chapters seem to be very contradictory in their I don't know about their message, about their air, about their attitude. Verse 12 says, we beat him, we beat him, we beat him, we beat them, we killed them, we destroyed them, we destroyed them, we destroyed everyone. I destroyed everyone. And then chapter 13, God says, whoa, wait. You didn't do this, 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 you didn't do this. It seems very, I don't know if contradictory, because they're not saying opposite things. But the feel of the chapters is very, very different.
It's just perspective, I guess.
So he's saying chapter 12 is the half full, half full. Chapter 13 is the half empty. Okay, very, very much could be. Another possibility that I was looking at, I saw it today, that if you look in chapter 12, it's specific kings, specific cities, I think chapter 12 gives us the feeling we came into the land, and basically everyone we fought, right, we destroyed, okay, and everywhere we went, and it's large parts of the land, but we didn't necessarily live in the entire land yet. And we didn't necessarily get rid of everyone. There wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough whatever. But I think someone, actually what I saw is I thought this was very nice. He said, it's not so difficult for us today to understand this idea. where you could come into the land, you could win all the battles, you can be in general, be in control of the region, but not necessarily be in control of every specific area. A person can come, this person who wrote it more explicitly, said, a person can come to the end of the 6-day war and feel euphoria of, look how much we conquered, look how much we won, it's amazing. But at the same time, still have quite a few pockets, specific pockets. Some of them are very big pockets, some of them are very difficult pockets, where we did not gain full control. So there's control of the region, of the land as a whole, but still have a lot of patches that have not been cleared out. So I found that to be a very good possible way to understand the relationship between chapter 12 and chapter 13. Yes?
Yeah, because the purpose of us to go to Eretz Israel is to live in the country, and to live to have a country, and you need borders. You need to send your people. I don't know, to make a relationship with another countries. So you need port in those days, which they didn't have airplanes. So you need to move to another countries to send your diplomats. I don't know, and that's why you have to be like a country, like.
Well, I agree, but only partially, because the concept of a country, as we know it today, did not exist in the same way in the ancient world, even during those times. There weren't internationally recognized borders, and there wasn't the concept, the construct of a sovereign country, nation. We see how this region was set up. You had a lot of ethnicities living in the region, and you had city-states. You had it was cities, and you had maybe a tribe or tribes that originated from the same. You had the Hittites and the Amorites. The Hittites and the Geshurites and the Perizzites, and you had all these. But they each lived in their own city, and they didn't necessarily. The concept of a country per se was not something it's a bit anachronistic for us to think with those kind of terms, and we'll see that it will take hundreds of years until there is an actual Jewish kingdom. We'll see the entire book of Shoftim is basically the story of 12 tribes who act to some degree like 12 different nations. And so the concept of a country with clear international borders is not something that really existed back then. You had kingdoms, but you had different nations living within that kingdom. And we have Givon. We have 3 cities of Givon who the children of Israel made an alliance with. And they were permitted to stay and remain there under certain conditions. They have to pay a tax, they have to be subservient, they have to whatever, fine. But they're not. So it's difficult for us today to fully understand, and I'm not fully. And there's a whole discipline within the study of Bible study to understand how the ancient world was constructed and what were the. How the societies function, and borders and tribes and kingdoms and nations and borders. Okay, let's continue. Yes, Sylvia.
I had another thought. This kind of relates to the comment you said before, that just like Moshe didn't complete his mission, neither did Yehoshua. And this comment of him not doing all these things is not so much a rebuke against Yehoshua, but it's for the reader, because in chapter 12 it says, look at all these great things that Yehoshua did. He conquered 31 kings. But I want to impress upon you, he didn't do all these things, just so you might, in case someone would think that Yehoshua might have achieved more than Moshe. But really, Moshe is the greatest leader, and no one can achieve more than him.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I agree that could be part of what's being insinuated here. I agree 100% that part of this, we can't help but continuously compare how Yehoshua, just like the way, from the moment he became a leader, we're constantly comparing. Also, when he comes to the end of his leadership and the end of his life, we can't not compare it to Moshe, especially when the contrast is being made for us in some of these phrases, explicitly. I agree. Okay, let's continue. Verse 7. And again, this is still Hashem speaking to Yehoshua. Verse 7. And now, divide this land for an inheritance to the 9 tribes and the half tribe of Manasseh. Which land? It says, divide this land for inheritance to the 9 tribes and the half tribe of Manasseh. Which land should be divided amongst the 9.5 tribes?
Sounds like it's all the land that's to be conquered.
Correct. All of the land that still needs to be conquered, I want you now, before you die, I want you to divide it up between the 9.5 tribes. Thoughts on this verse?
Is it like Moshe? Did Moshe prematurely determine the Levite cities as well, even before the land was conquered, or was there some aspect of that?
The 6. Well, there are 6 main cities. No, there are 6 cities of refuge, which happen to also be cities of the Levites. But we'll see later on that the Levites have many cities. They have 48 cities scattered all over Israel. But there were 6 primary cities, which were the cities of refuge, which Moshe designated before he passed away. 3 on the eastern side of the Jordan River and 3 on the western side of the Jordan River. Okay, what else do we see? Okay, so yes, other thoughts on this verse?
He told Joshua to do this now, not after he left. Because after he leaves, it could be like revolution, and everybody will leave house.
Okay, so you're right. There's a very practical rationale for doing this, which is because if Joshua, who still is the leader and still has the authority, is seen is unquestionably seen as the leader, as the continuation of Moshe, as the representative of God, if before he passes away he divvies up the land, then hopefully this will, everyone will accept this. Whereas if Yehoshua passes away before he divvies up the land, obviously this could be a cause for tremendous civil unrest or worse. Absolutely, I agree. There's definitely a very important technical purpose this serves. What else? What other purpose does this serve? Yes.
Maybe they might have thought they conquered enough, and then they might think, well, we don't want the rest. But the fact that he's already giving it to them, it gives them more incentive to capture it.
Not only 100%. Not only is it giving them more incentive, it says, listen, some of them, we'll see, are getting lands exclusively in areas that have not been conquered yet. The majority of the land, as far as the regions, the majority, if we were looking at a map now, we would see the main part of the land that was conquered is along the mountain range. The mountain range from, somewhere around Beersheba probably, all the way up to Samaria. Okay, to north of Samaria, the majority of the mountain. That is not enough for all 9.5 tribes. So basically saying, listen, Josh is saying, here, I'm designating your land, and this is your land. That's it, because that area belongs to someone else. So you want to inherit your land? Go conquer it. This is also assuring, so Hashem is saying to him, I want you to divvy it up now. This will assure that everyone will complete the mission of conquering the land and settling it. So it's not just that I'm leaving the instructions with someone. I'm telling you exactly, and the chapters are going to go very specifically to describe each tribe's designated area. I think there's also, so I think it's also a matter of incentive. It's also a matter of making sure that it happens. I think there's also something I think to myself in modern, if I'm getting a little political, it's a tremendous act of faith, I think also. Because I think you're right. They could have easily have said, listen, the area that we've conquered, it's plenty of space right now. It is enough area, probably more or less, for the majority of the Jewish people to live in. And listen, we've been traveling through the desert for 40 years. For the last 5 years, we've been at war. It's a long time. Let's rest a little bit. This is okay for now. He says, no. This is not, no. You have to complete the mission. But I think it's also an act of faith saying that even if right now we don't have it, this is yours. And even if someone else is sitting there now, and in this sense, I think this has a very powerful political message for today, that even if for right now someone else is sitting there, you need to know it is yours. And Joshua is saying that this is specifically yours, and this is yours. This is given to you by God. This is your area. This is your destiny. Yes, I know someone else is sitting there, and I know you're perfectly okay where you are right now. But you shouldn't be. Remember, this was promised to you by God. Okay, let's continue. Verse 8. This is again still God speaking. With him, the Reubenites and the Gadites have received their inheritance, which Moshe gave them beyond the Jordan eastward, even as Moshe, the servant of the Lord, gave them. You notice how the phrase came back? Moshe Eved Hashem. From Aroer, that is upon the bank of the river of Arnon, and the city that is in the midst of the river, and all the plain of Medva to Dibon, and all the cities of Sichon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, to the border of the children of Ammon. This is all the inheritance that was promised to the 2.5 tribes before they entered the land, before they crossed the Jordan. And Gilad, and the border of the Geshurites and the Ma'achatites, and all Mount Hermon, and all the Bashan and Salcha, all the kingdom of Og in Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaret and Edrei, who remained of the remnant of the giant. These did Moshe smite and cast them out. I think this is also, the fact that Hashem is mentioning this to Yehoshua. I think this also is a bit of a, here Moshe, he made sure that everything that the 2.5 tribes on that side, the side that Moshe made sure that as far as he got, things were completed as best as he could. Moshe conquered the entirety of the area that the 2.5 tribes are supposed to take, and he promised it to them. They didn't fully inherit it yet because there was a deal, right? Only after they crossed the Jordan and helped the rest of the nation conquer, only then will they be allowed to inherit. That is why suddenly now we're having a throwback to it. But look, Moshe completed that stage as best as he could. Okay? So up until verse 12 is Hashem speaking. And look how great this is. Verse 13, nevertheless, the children of Israel did not expel the Geshurites or the Maachatites, but the Geshurites and Maachatites dwell among the Israelites until this day. So verse 1 was Hashem saying to Joshua, a lot is left. And we said it didn't sound accusatory. It sounded just, stating fact. But verse 13, how does that sound? The children of Israel did not expel the Geshurites or the Maachatites, but the Geshurites and Maachatites dwell among the Israelites until this day. How does this sound to us? You're right. I agree. It could be stating fact, but I think it does sound a little bit accusatory. It doesn't mean, because look, in verse 1, it's described in a passive way. This is the land that remains to be conquered. Whereas over here, It's not the land that needs to be conquered. It's the land that the children of Israel didn't conquer. It's not phrased passively. Someone here did not do something. And?
But this is Yehoshua's fault.
What?
Pasuk 13 isn't Yehoshua's fault. It's
I agree. It doesn't say, and Joshua did not expel. It says the children of Israel. It's interesting. Why is it not Joshua's fault? Is it because he's old and he can't do it anymore? Or is this already talking after Joshua? It's unclear, but it does seem it's not God directly rebuking them, saying, you disobeyed me by not conquering them, and this it's not, but it's not as passive as what he said to. And again, this is not Hashem speaking. This is like the narrator. Okay, verse 14. Only to the tribe of Levi he gave no inheritance. The sacrifices of Hashem, God of Israel, made by fire, are their inheritance, as he said to him or to them. It seems odd that be stated here. But
What do you mean not?
what? Why not?
No, it's odd. What do you mean that it's odd? It's not odd. Maybe Hashem still remembers what Shimon and Levi did.
Whoa. Where does Shimon come in here? Meaning, even if you wanted to somehow connect Shimon and Levi, that would mean it's some kind of negative. Does this sound negative or positive, verse 14?
positive. They have a different role.
They have a different role. Absolutely. Meaning, this is a reminder, I think, a powerful reminder, that it's not just about conquering, as we've said before. It's not just about conquering and settling and just getting land. There's 8% of the nation that don't inherit the land. Why? 8% of the nation, their job is to not be connected specifically to a land, rather to be designated as the intermediaries with Hashem. I think it's a powerful, especially if we're going to be going, and we'll see, into years now of this is what's all the tribes are going to be busy now the next few years with conquering and settling the land, and saying, don't forget that there's a whole chunk of the nation that isn't going to be dealing with any of that. And if there's a chunk of the nation that is not going to be dealing with that, this says something about everyone. I mean, even those who are doing it, it's a powerful reminder that it's a powerful reminder that it's not just about conquering a land, destroying people, burning property. No. It's part of something more than that. Okay, let's continue. I want to run through the we're not even going to see all of it. Okay, from verse 15 until verse 21, it recounts the specific borders that were given to the tribe of Reuben on the eastern side of the Jordan River. Okay? We'll skip to verse 15. And Moshe gave to the tribe of the children of Reuben inheritance according to their families and their border. Okay, and it just tried to describe the exact borders of their inheritance. Okay, verse 21. All the towns of the tableland and the entire kingdom of Sichon, the king of the Amorites, who had reigned in Heshbon, for Moshe defeated him and the Midianite chiefs Evi, Rechem, Tzur, Hur, and Reba, who had dwelt in the land as princes of Sichon. Verse 22, together with the others that they slew, the Israelites put Balaam, son of Beor, the sorcerer, to the sword. And the border of the children of Reuben was the Jordan and its border. This was the inheritance of the children of Reuben according to their families, the cities, and their villages. Why does it suddenly mention Bilam? Well, it mentions Bilam, technically speaking, because he lived in that area. So it's saying, by the way, the children of Israel killed him. What's the significance of that? Any thoughts? No? Okay, let's continue. Verse 24, Moshe gave to the tribe of Gad. Okay, then it describes from verse 24 until verse 28. This is the inheritance of the children of Gad, according to their families, the cities and their villages. Okay, verse 29, and Moshe gave inheritance to the half tribe of Manasseh. Okay, and that goes till verse 32. These are the tribes which Moshe caused to inherit in the plains of Moab, on the other side of the Jordan, eastward facing Jericho. So it just gave us a quick overview of the exact borders of the inheritance of the 2.5 tribes.
Can I come back to Bilam?
Yeah, wait, just 1 second. Yes, in 1 second. Last verse of the chapter. But to the tribe of Levi, Moshe gave no inheritance. Hashem, God of Israel, was their inheritance as he spoke to them. And the obvious question is, why is this stated again? It's actually the exact same phrasing. Okay, we'll get back to that. Yes, Galia.
They killed Bilam maybe because Hashem said that Moshe was the first prophet for Israel, and Bilam he was for non-Jews. So maybe the Jews, they were afraid of the influence of Bilam. And that's why, because he was such a great prophet.
If you were right, that's the purpose of it being here, then he wouldn't be called the magician.
Yeah, he was a magician.
He would have been called Bilam the prophet. Because he was a prophet. In the Torah, the story in Parshat Balak, he's described as a prophet. But over here, he's not nicknamed the prophet. He's described as, I don't know, Paul. I'm interested in what is your thing? What word does it use there in verse? What? Sorcerer.
Yeah.
Okay. They killed him as a sorcerer, not as a prophet. Yeah, we'll get back to it. Yeah, yeah.
Can I try to give another reason? Does this thing with Bilam tie into the thing of with Levi? Because wasn't it when Pinchas killed those people, like it ended the whole disaster that started?
That's a nice connection. I didn't think about that. That's a very interesting connection, because it's the advice of Bilam that Midian followed in prostituting their daughters in order to cause the children of Israel to sin, and then there was a plague and thousands died, and the one who stopped it was Pinchas, the tribe of Levi, which is one of the reasons, that's an excellent point, which is one of the reasons why the tribe of Levi merited to inherit the 48 cities, and not like Shimon, who sinned in that same sin, right? It was the head of the tribe of Shimon who sinned publicly in front of the nation, who Pinchas from Share of Levi executed. It's very nice. That very much could be part of what's going on here. But I still think there's a question of why does it have to explicitly tell us? So Galia, I think that I agree with the direction you're going, just not with the specifics. I think it has to do with reminding us, meaning there's a danger, there's a risk that when a nation is busy with warfare and with taking over territory, it's very easy to think that the whole mission here, the entire story here, is just about land. It's just about territory. It's just about who's going to control it, who's going to, that it's just a matter of kilometers. That it's a technical dispute about land. And both of these points, and making a point saying Bil'am, the sorcerer, the magician, the person of who has, who's some in one way or another tied into dark, whether you want to call it sorcery or you want to call it trickery, however the different ways to understand whether he actually had any kind of powers or he did not have powers. But this is an important point. It's not just that we're repaying our debt. We're paying back the debt that we owe him. And that's the same reminder about Levi. Before you start talking about divvying up the land to the 2.5 tribes and afterwards, to maintain throughout as much as possible throughout these upcoming years, which will all be about physical, about war and physical control over the land, to remember that ultimately the source, the reason for what we're doing, and the goal of what we're doing is the relationship with Hashem, is a higher destiny. Meaning, our control of the land is not, and we've said this point, but just because we've said it doesn't mean we don't need to say it again. I think this is a central theme, and I think we see this today, and I'm going to be a little political, that it's very easy to get lost in the day-to-day technical dispute over the land and thinking this is just a question of land, and to forget that the control over the land for both sides is always about, really it stems from something else. It stems from history. It stems from culture, and it also serves a certain destiny. It serves a certain way about how each side who's living in this territory sees their role, sees their connection to this place, sees their destiny as a people. And it's saying, don't think that even though you're busy day in, day out, talking about strategy and warfare and what plants to what things you should plant and reap and sow, don't get confused and think that the dispute over the land of Israel is a territorial dispute. It manifests itself in a territorial dispute, but really what it stems from and what it's geared towards is a dispute between a Bilam and a Levi, or as you said, or a Pinchas. That's ultimately, and while you're busying yourself with strategy and warfare and plowing the fields, don't forget, remember what you're actually doing is, you're part of a much, much greater destiny. That's why you have a Levi, to remind you that. And that's why you're killing Bilam, to remind them of that. Yes?
Can I ask you something? What I don't remember is the tribe of Menashe. They asked they asked to live east of Jordan.
Yes.
I don't think they did.
Half of the tribe. Yes, half of the tribe.
But I don't remember that they asked for this.
Yeah.
We know that Reuben and God they asked.
So
but I think Moshe by himself he just sent.
What you're saying rings a bell, but I'm pretty sure that half of them did ask. But and
I did
so
when he decided to.
What you're saying rings a bell. So you might be right. I would have to go back. What?
Can it be that the reason he just wanted, not wanted just the children of Leah to be there?
Could be. What you're saying rings a bell with me, but I don't remember the specifics. It very much could be that you are right.
Well, wasn't it half of Manasseh was outside and half inside, and they would travel back and forth, and that would help unify and.
Yeah. Okay. Beseder. Okay, everyone. Next week, class will be taking, God willing, will be taking place as usual.
Thank you.
Okay, and please stay tuned to instructions as far as what we will be doing and won't be doing. Meaning, I might send, we'll be doing, we'll be covering half of the next chapter. So I would advise, though, if we do end up skipping any parts, I would strongly advise that you on your own just read through it, so that way when we get to the end of Joshua, even if we haven't done all of it together, at least you will have personally at least finished the entire book. Okay. Shavua Tov.
Good week, Rabbi. Take care, everyone.